What's up, my friends in YouTube land, and those who aren't my friends too, I guess. There seems to be like a troll that follows me around, and it's his first thing to vote every video down. It's just thought about that just a second ago. So I guess you aren't all my friends, but hey, trolls and friends and haters and lovers and all the different people out there. That's kind of the theme of where I'm coming from on this video. It's really funny. Earlier I was talking with a friend on Facebook, and I think he got a little heated about some comment I left the other day. But I was joking with him, and I was thinking about how we get misinterpreted. And I said, "Can't you tell when you're being trolled?" And he said, he thought I was talking about like his family or who the guy he was arguing with. I was like, "No, dude, I'm talking about me, your bro." I was like, "I'm trolling your ass," and he's like. He said something about using proper grammar, but he misspelled the word grammar. He used ER at the end. And I couldn't help but call him out on it. But I let him know, Facebook is not... I don't take Facebook comments seriously, Nor do I take YouTube comments seriously. And I think people misconstrue that or misunderstand that a lot. Like if a person posts something where they disagree with something I say, which happens all the time, get several each day... pick and choose whether it's even worth responding. A lot of the times I'll just say whatever, buddy, and just blow them off. But then sometimes they'll come back with this like attitude, like, well, you're putting yourself out there and you're making videos, so you're exposing yourself, and therefore you deserve retort. As if it's okay for them to retort to me their disagreement, but I can't retort back. And I'm like, well, usually it starts off with somebody saying something stupid. Like earlier, somebody said, get educated before you say something or something like that. I was like, whatever, it was on a video that was entitled Carpo Rant. So I said, it's not exactly a functional science educational video here, but neither are any of mine. If you're wondering about the hat, those of you who know my channel, I have a brown one that I wear sometimes. It's like my wolf hat, and I unfortunately was stupid and put it in the dryer, and I wasn't paying attention, so it got like almost looks like sheep's wool now, and I needed another soft one. So I need a nice fresh paws, and I really like this one better. And I know some people are out there thinking, oh, that's cool, and other people are thinking, God, how old are you, man? Well, I'll tell you how old I am. I'm 40 years old, and I don't give a fuck what people think about me. I do put myself out here. I do love communicating with folks. I do love feedback. I love positive feedback. And I love arguing with negative feedback if it turns out to be something that's unwarranted. And I'm just human, is my point. I feel like everybody's trying to live up to a standard that I guess I can't figure out who exactly set that standard or who decided, what it means to be mature. But... it's easy. For me, sometimes I'll see somebody who's, say, in their 60s, and they'll be dressed in, like, say, hipster clothes or something. Like, it just doesn't look right. And you got to step back for a minute and say, wait, let people express themselves. And really funny, there's something actually that came to mind that just happened today. I was down at the playground. I took my kids up to the big playground to go play for a couple hours, and I was sitting there watching all the kids and the parents, and I noticed a fellow walked by with a veteran's cap on. And I started thinking about veterans, and my first kind of thought was, of course, I'm always have these philosophies going of why people do things. And so I crossed my mind of why do veterans wear hats and put stickers on their car? And this is not to be offensive in any way. I totally respect veterans for putting their lives on the line, and often it's a warranted and needed service. It doesn't mean I support the military at whole or any of the attacks that we, have committed, or some of the nonsense or the ignorance that people are swept into when they're 18 and they don't know any better. But there is a needed service there. So the people who wear the hats and put stickers on their cars and that are very veteran oriented, I always just kind of assumed, I never thought about it very much, but I thought perhaps they're just, they want people to know that they served for them, and that they like the recognition that they get. And that may sound harsh, but it's not. This is the reason why we all dress the way we do. It's to be recognized. But I took it a step further today, and I realized that veterans are probably wearing caps and stickers and whatnot to recognize other veterans. And I may be off base, but if you're a veteran that, displays you being a veteran, and I'm curious to hear your response to that, because there's nothing wrong with it, and I'm not implying there is. I think that it's important, because when I saw his cap, I thought about my cap that I wear, my Papadosio hat that has my pins in it. And when I go to a concert, I'll wear that, and it's like my badge of honor. That I have my pins with the associations, the bands I like, the ideas, the values I have. There's one planting a seed of, a flower of life seed, and all these different ideas, and a picture of a little meditating guy. And I have my own, I guess, things that move me. And when I ask myself about this is what all cross my mind at once. It's taking longer to explain it than it actually was in my mind, but I realized I don't wear the clothes I wear, or if I wear this out in public, I don't wear this to be recognized by the average person or to be said, oh, he's different at all. Because I know that people probably point and laugh at me, at least in their minds. And I think, why do I do it? Why do I dress weird or eccentric? And I thought, it's so I'm recognized by other people who share my values, who are interested in the alternative lifestyle, if you will, who think alternatively, think outside the box, It's like when I was at Soak, I remember sitting across from a guy, and we were all sitting around this fire, and people were coming and going, and I was sitting there, and I was kind of tripping. I was tripping pretty hard. And I saw him, he had one of these on. He was like one of the only guys with one on, and he was showing somebody the paw, and this girl was like, oh, that's so cool. And I was like, he didn't even see me sitting there, and I just stood up all of a sudden, just tripping balls, and I was like, what was that? Give me paw, bro. He was like, yeah. And it was like this, just this little moment, between two random people, totally unrelated, but it just popped into my head. I really cherish just being who I am. I cherish the ups and downs. I've noticed that over the past year or so, I've started to notice a little bit more about myself and my personality, how I react to things, but more than that, like I've said before, I've learned so much about people from YouTube and my interactions here. I can tell when a person's just trying to push my buttons. Sometimes they succeed. That's fine. Usually it's when a person is trying to belittle like an opinion that I have on something when there's no fact. But often if I get called out on something, that forces me to research more. But that brings me to what I wanted to talk about really in this video. Let's see how far I'm already 7 minutes in. And this kind of brings me, I guess I'm glad that I did this later, because then the people who aren't that interested in what I have to say will have already dropped out from the video. We've come to realize that we all have our own opinions, our own values, and we know that. The internet's brought that a lot. It's become a lot more prevalent. We can no longer just say an entire culture is ignorant, or blacks are this, whites are this, all whites are racist, all blacks are criminals, all the things that people have made up in their minds in the past to separate them from each other. And now we kind of have to get over that. And so we're starting to accept each other's views. For example, it's improper to go and insult somebody for being a different color. It's improper to insult someone for something that they can't help or change. But when it comes to belief systems, and mostly religion versus atheism, it becomes a heated issue of contention that both sides seem to belittle each other. And I've been thinking about this a lot for the last year, as to whether a person's better off believing in a delusion that makes them comfortable in life, or if they should be scientifically rigid and fact-oriented about every single thing that they want to believe. Now, I'm sure I've talked with a lot of atheists, and I've talked with a lot of Christians, in private chats as well as on, videos, and I've changed my view on Christians. I know that there are moderates and heavy Christians, hardcore Bible thumpers, and then there are people who just believe in Jesus, and then there are people who believe in a Christ consciousness, but that other Christians would say they're not a true Christian unless they're worshiping Christ. But I don't believe that. I think that a person worships whatever they want, does whatever they want. But the point being that when I've heard the argument from both sides, both extreme views, I find that they tend to always get angry at each other. Not angry, but they belittle each other. The atheists are always quick to jump down Christians' throats. Many atheists claim that they really don't care. They have this attitude of, I don't care if God exists or not. It's irrelevant to me. But then they go on these forums and these groups and spend all this time, focused on attacking Christians. I don't understand it. And I'm not saying that all atheists are this way. But Christians do the same thing. And I'm sorry to single out atheists and Christians, but this is just for the sake of my example I'm making. If you were to take a middle ground approach to life and say, look, science is a very useful tool for understanding the world, yet it does have its limits to satisfy our souls. Okay? Now, I'm speaking completely from personal experience here. And this is an issue. I want to make sure I clarify this, that to me, science as it's set up right now does not satisfy my soul. And a person may say, well, that's just because you're ignorant. You're not aware of the facts. And I'd say maybe so. But it's irrelevant whether or not I can learn enough facts to make it satisfactory. The one thing I can say that goes against that belief that by learning more, it's more satisfying, is that the more I learn, the less satisfied I am with the answers I'm getting. And so there's part of me, my logical side, that's saying you need to follow a system of approach, repeatable patterns, repeatable processes that we can say this is a fact. But then I see a lot of interesting potential facts being left out in scientific experiments, such as there have been several experiments done 10 times in a row where the result's always what they don't expect, so they assume that it's a fault in the system. How many times has this left out a potential important discovery? But I'm not arguing against science, because without science, we would be still stuck in the dark ages thinking that people who have, seizures are possessed by the devil. I mean, science has allowed us to break religious dogma. Yet at the same time, it seems like we've left something behind. And so this is what comes to kind of the crux of my discussion here, which is, are we better off deluding ourselves a little bit in life to believe that, well, perhaps there is a multiverse, or it doesn't have to be God. And I'm not talking about taking a religion here. I'm talking about if you feel that something's true in your heart, as if nature has put it there. It's just like an instinct, a will, just something you just know. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. How much evidence and science and proof do you have to throw at it before it goes away? And so far, everything that I've thrown at my what I know in my heart, all the books, all the information, everything I've thrown at it to try to understand has left me wanting more of not knowledge, but just accepting. And so in the past couple of years, I've been able to set a lot of what I was interested in aside, the obsessions I had with certain subjects, and just start to take a newfound approach to everything. And it's really kind of the way I've always been. I'm always taking new approaches, but this one is kind of letting go and realizing that there are certain things that we may never prove and never understand. And I know often an argument that comes back at me is, well, it doesn't mean we won't understand it. And I would totally agree with that. But at the same time would say, what good does it do me to believe in the potential of something that doesn't make me happy when I could believe in the potential of something that does make me happy? And where this goes wrong is religious dogma. If I want to believe that there's a higher power and that there's an energy in the universe that's aware, or that the universe is conscious, or even the solar system is conscious, then that should be my choice. Yet, if I believe that a particular Bible passage is true, and that I put that upon others so they don't have their freedoms, that's wrong. Your religion should never impede on what anybody else does, whether it's a simple belief or idea. I was, after I took the kids to the park, we went down to Burgerville. And my son, he's 6, and he's just fucking genius. I'm sorry. He brings up the craziest stuff to me that I'm just like still thinking about all the time. He goes, the universe, he goes, all the atoms, and because we were talking about how atoms come, he goes, they come together, and I was like, actually, there's these little energy packets that come together, and then they form these, what they call quarks. Really, we have no idea what any of this stuff is. It's all theoretical. The idea is that pieces build and build and build and build in these patterns until you get to atoms, molecules, compounds, chemicals, all these different things. And he goes, in the whole universe, nothing must be something. I thought about it for a second. He doesn't just say stuff that doesn't make sense. He says stuff that's like makes me think. So I couldn't just blow it off and go, oh, nothing's just nothing. I thought about it, and I was like, I know he was trying to explain what he meant, and I said, so basically you're saying that without nothing, something would have nothing to exist in, and therefore something would be nothing. Therefore nothing must be something. And he's like, yeah. Mind you, he's 6, okay? And I was like, okay. And I was like, you got me thinking. And he goes, basically in a nutshell, he was saying that, since nothing is what you would call empty space, I guess. But he's like, nothing could exist unless he's like, if there was a big bang, it had to go into something to happen. And these are things that a lot of people think about all the time, but when you hear it from a kid, it just renews your interest because you realize they have a virgin mind, untainted, unpolluted, and very rigid and wanting to understand, and they tend to gravitate towards things that do make sense. And it's just amazing to listen to kids. They're really smart. Some of them. I mean, some kids are just, whatever. But he has his shortcomings too, because like me, he tends to be a little ADD from thing to thing, and learning thing to thing. And the kind of personality that I am is, I'll go running into the house and tell my wife, did you know that gravity is this and this and this? I spent all day yesterday obsessed with gravity. I was like, okay, we don't know what the fuck it is. It doesn't fit any models we understand. It follows this law of constants, which it drops off at the same rate of light, and several other things. I started seeing these fractal patterns in it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have to ease off this. I wanted to make a video about gravity yesterday. I'm like, no, I'm going to set this ahead a few months and get deeper into it. But, which brings me kind of to the point that the more I learn, say as gravity, for example, I spent several hours reading reports, and one of these top quantum physicists, I don't know, he's a top physics guy, but he kind of caused a stir by saying gravity doesn't exist. And a lot of people have been saying this lately, and that's what got me interested. I said, of course, if you say that, people say you're an idiot. What holds us to the ground? Therefore, gravity, by definition, what it is, of course it exists because it's holding us to the ground. Things fall. But what they're saying is a little more complex, that it's not that gravity doesn't exist, it's just that it doesn't fit within our standard model and within Einstein's equation, which, would you be surprised? We're still living on equations that are 100 years old and trying to milk them for everything, throwing in dark matter, dark energy, and these are the things that give you a discouragement in science when they say that we know only less than 1/2% of what the universe is made of. And it's like, okay, well, where does that leave us when we're trying to tell the scientific, logical-minded people, hey, there's more to it. There's a spiritual realm. There's inner dimensions. And they're like, that's just hogwash, pseudoscience. And so I'm trapped in the middle of pseudoscience and real science. I'm trapped in the middle of mysticism and knowledge and truth and lies and trying to get my best view of what's going on. And so I really welcome, arguments against the points I have, because it helps me to check myself to say, okay, wait a minute, is there more to this? Of course, sometimes I just go spouting on about shit I don't understand, and that's the freedom of the internet, right? Then I can sit and make videos and talk about what I want. It's like my friend was over earlier, and he's like, do you make, can you make ads on that or make money? And I said, I could, but I've had so many people approach me to try to put ads on my frickin' channel. They're like, what do you want to make? And what are your goals with your channel? And I could get you, millions of views a day. And it's like, I don't give a shit. I'm not here to make money. I'm here to talk about philosophy. It's been kind of one of those things where I've gone back and forth on it, how much time I spend talking. But I'm not just talking to you. I'm talking to myself. I'm learning about myself. I'm learning about you. I'm learning about us as a whole. And what I've learned so far, in a nutshell, is that the folks who want to be overly logical tend to seem more unhappy to me. And the people who I meet who tend to be a little more ethereal or spiritual in a way tend to seem happier to me. And I'll just leave it at that. There's not much else I can say. We go by the law of averages, okay? If you see people that are happy with a certain behavior and people that are sad, I'd rather spend the rest of my life happy and delusional than sad and right. It reminds me of a quote that somebody once said, and if I'm not mistaken, God, who was it? I can't remember at the moment. Maybe Aristotle, or I shouldn't even make a name. So I was thinking Socrates at first, but he didn't write anything. Aristotle wrote all this stuff. But he said, I would rather believe in a higher power and be wrong than believe in nothing and be right.